How to build a 6 to 7 figure Airbnb business. You've been asking for more Airbnb shows. Well, you got it today.
Here we are at our very first rental property.
Hey everyone, I'm Clayton Morris. Welcome into the Investing in Real Estate show. Longtime real estate investor. A number of years ago, I left my day job thanks to financial freedom with buy and hold real estate. We have a guest on the show today. His name is Brian Page, and he built up a large portfolio. He was crushing it in real estate, and then the crash happened. But then he rebuilt. And he rebuilt on the backs of Airbnb, and he's going to tell us his story today, how he became a millionaire with Airbnb. Brian, nice to see you. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Clayton. Thank you so much. Very excited to be here.
Well, awesome to have you. So you are down in Charleston, South Carolina, beautiful neck of the woods down there, historic Charleston, not too far from Fort Sumter and a lot of American history. So tell our audience a little bit about yourself, how you got it started, and take us through some of the crash, what happened in 2007 to you, to kind of provide some context for us.
Sure. Well, when I got out of college, I was looking for, an opportunity to own my own business and to make money. And I tried all these different businesses that never seemed to work. I never could find one that actually made me money. And I started reading all these books at Barnes and Noble on real estate investing. And I learned that, more people were kind of achieved that millionaire status through real estate than almost any other vehicle. And I thought, maybe I should get into real estate. And I looked at all the different ways to do real estate, and I thought, I'm going to flip houses. That's the thing I want to do. Ended up flipping over 100 properties in the early 2000s. Built up a big portfolio. I started getting into multifamily, construction, and you name it, just about everything that you can do in real estate. And that all went really well. I had millions of dollars in my portfolio up until the big crash. And that's where everything turned for me.
So what happened during the crash? So first of all, take me back to the flipping part. Were you actually buying properties, renovating them and flipping, or were you doing wholesaling in order to build up some quick cash? What was the flipping procedure for you?
Yeah. By flipping, I mean full-on renovations.
Wow.
Buy, renovate, and then resell. And a couple of them I kept, but for the most part, we were quick turning, 2 or 3 a month. And I had a really good crew, and we could knock them out pretty quickly. And that's what I did.
How did you find those deals, and where were those deals?
Those deals were in North Carolina, although I did some flipping in California as well. I lived out there for a few years. But primarily, it was North Carolina. And we're talking, median home price and below, and I would pre-sell all the properties. So I actually had them sold before I bought them, which was kind of cool. So
Wow.
I would get a contract on a property. I would immediately go to one of my investors and I'd say, you want 2 or 3 renovated properties? I'll help you rent them and everything. And I would pre-sell them before I even started the renovation. So it's kind of a no-risk proposition.
And so your end customer was not a retail husband and wife with a child looking to buy a house to move into. It was for rental properties.
Just for rental properties. So I could show what the cash flow was, and I could go to the investor and say, I project you'll make this much per month, and how many properties do you want to buy? So my properties were all sold, going in, which was kind of cool. I learned that from a mentor of mine.
Great. So then I guess my question would be, how in the world did things go south? If you pre-sold them, these were for rental properties, where you have a tenant in these properties that are going to pay the mortgage, or going to pay the rent on the property. How did things go sideways for you? Were you over leveraged?
No, I was leveraged pretty heavily on most of my portfolio, but what I did is I decided to get in a totally different business, which was construction. And I got into spec homes, and more specifically, multi-million-dollar spec homes. So I was working with Frank McKinney down in Florida. He was a mentor of mine. He builds 50, 80, $100 million spec homes in Florida. And I decided I was going to do a multi-million-dollar home in North Carolina at the beach. So I built a spec home right on the beach, millions of dollars, put most of my cash into it, furnished it, built a 6-figure pool, right there on the beach and on the other side of the dune. Had it all ready to go and was getting ready to list it. And that was the very week that we had the banking crisis.
Oh.
And so everything stopped, and I couldn't. Not only did I have that property, I had several others that I had borrowed heavily on at the beach. And so everything turned. I could not rent them because, of course, the first market to crash is usually the vacation market as far as selling properties. I couldn't sell them. and I couldn't make enough to cover everything. And so that was kind of the beginning of the end for me. And the properties weren't even worth what I had into them at a certain point. So it was getting into speculative real estate that really burned me. Had I sold that property a few months earlier, I would have made $1 million on that one deal.
Wow. I mean, there's a lesson in this, right? I mean, so you were doing something that was working really well, and I was about to get nervous, like thinking, okay, that's where things went wrong. Was it's kind of what I do today, what you were doing with the rental properties, right? You're finding them, fixing them up, renovating them, placing a tenant. But it was on the speculative stuff, and that's exactly what happened to me, and that's what I've talked about here on the show before. The speculative stuff, going into North Carolina. Up in the mountains, investing in this golf course community, this Phil Mickelson golf course community that was going to be built up, clubhouse and all these, and the builder backed out, Phil Mickelson backed out, and all of my money that was in it on these construction loans just went belly up. Speculative, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, speculation works well when when the economy's roaring and everything's hot, and kind of like we've been for a little while here. But when it turns, it'll burn you. And so I have nothing bad to say about owning property, holding cash flowing properties, all that kind of stuff. That's a great model, and you build wealth that way. But when you get into a bit, the thing about real estate is people think that real estate is all one thing. It's not. There are very, very different things you can do within real estate. And just because you're an expert in one area doesn't mean it's going to translate over and make you a great developer. Or a great builder, or any of those kind of things. So very few people can make money in every single category of real estate. So I do recommend specializing and doing one thing, and if it's working, just doing more of that. And that's what I should have done. But so I'm thankful it happened the way it did.
I am too. I mean, we went through that during that time period, and I'm thankful that I did. It taught me a lesson about speculation. It taught me a lesson about what works and what doesn't for us, and it's kept me on my path. People ask me all the time, why don't you do larger multifamilies? Well, for me, single family homes is how I was able to achieve financial freedom. It's a formula that has worked for me. Buying $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 homes, cash flowing $800, $900, $1,100 a month on rent, stable American-based job neighborhoods. That's been my formula for success. Why would I start swerving all over the place trying random things? And I think that's a big lesson for us, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was just the first chapter for me. It was a big and painful chapter, and I think a lot of people went through that lived through that and were investors. But I basically came out of that experience. I wasn't bankrupt, but you might as well call me bankrupt, because I had lost all the properties to foreclosure. My credit was decimated. I had no cash left, and it was kind of back to square one. And so a few years there, I was just struggling, trying to figure out what was I going to do next? What's the next opportunity for me? I loved real estate. I wanted to get back into it, but I was kind of very gun shy about taking on debt again. And so a few years after this whole thing, quite a few years later, I heard about Airbnb, and I was just renting a 2-bedroom apartment, standard apartment down here. And my roommate moved out of the second room. So I was looking for a new roommate, but then I thought, let's just list that thing on Airbnb, that spare room. And I ended up making enough off that room to pay for my rent, my utilities, basically all my bills. So I was working a job at the time. So all the money from my job was now going into my bank account, and I was apartment hacking the place I was living in. And that was pretty awesome, but that was kind of just getting my toe in the door, so to speak, to the whole Airbnb business.
Right. So then we transform from what you had gone through with the spec homes to making close to $300,000 in your first year renting out and listing properties on Airbnb. So you figured it out with that first sort of testing the waters. How did you then scale that? How did you take the next steps? And by the way, we'll have a link below. People can check out, if you're listening to the audio version of this, you can take Brian's webinar, which will teach you step-by-step the process to go through for his Airbnb training. So if you just go to morrisinvest.com/Airbnb, you can go right to that webinar training. So how did you make that switch, Brian?
Okay, so I had my room, on Airbnb, which is what millions of people do. That's how most people operate. They have one listing, maybe two. And I was on a plane at the time, flying. I was on a flight for work, and I sat down next to this gentleman who appeared to be very successful, at least by, judging by his appearances. We started talking. I could tell this guy was successful. He bought and sold companies. He brought companies public. Very, very smart guy. We had this long conversation, and he started asking me questions about my room on Airbnb. And he asked more and more questions, and he really wanted to focus on what I was doing, and I couldn't figure out why. I was like, why do you have any interest in this? This is not big money for you. He said, no, Brian. He said, I think you're sitting on a huge opportunity here. And I was like, well, what's the opportunity? He said, you need to go get more listings. And I said, well, that's great, but I have no desire to go get into debt again or buy properties or sign loans. I don't have the ability to do that anymore with my credit, my situation in the past. So what do I do? And he's like, no, not buying properties, leasing properties. You should go rent some properties and put them on Airbnb, and you can scale this thing. And I was like, whoa, wait a second. That's kind of a cool idea. It doesn't sound so revolutionary now, but at the time I'd never heard of that, and there was nobody even teaching how to do that. So I looked for a rental in my town. I just found a place a few blocks away, a sign in the front yard, knocked on the door, talked to the lady. She had a little one-bedroom apartment out back behind her house. And I told her, I said, this sounds crazy, but I'd like to lease your place and put it on the home sharing sites and have guests stay there. And I'm not going to stay there. And if you let me do this, I promise I'll take good care of your property and I'll pay you rent on time and all that kind of stuff. And she said, let me think about it. And got back to me about a week later and said, okay, you got a deal. Let's do this. And so I signed a lease, even with bad credit. I even told her my credit was not good. Signed a lease, put it on Airbnb. And the very first month, I made $1,600 net, first 30 days, I made $1,600. And so my mind was just almost exploded, because $1,600, I didn't make that much on my triplex when I owned a triplex.
Right.
I mean, that's unbelievable cash flow on a one bedroom. It's a very tiny little one bedroom apartment. And so that began the process of me finding more and more rentals and putting them on the site, and I just started scaling it.
So a couple of things here. Let's unpack this. She let you do like a sublet of it? So she knew right out of the gate, you're renting it, but you're not renting it. And did you draw up a specific lease agreement that just allowed you the opportunity to have like sort of a revolving door of people coming through there?
Yeah, well, technically it's not a sublease, because a sublease is a document between someone subleasing the property and the original person that leased the property. So there is no document, there's no obligation for anybody to pay the lease other than me. So it's not a sublease, even though people think that's what it is. But yeah, I just put it in writing. I just said, look, it's a standard lease. The only difference is I'm not going to live there, and you give me permission, written permission, that guests can come and go in the property, and that's what the purpose of this property is. And so she signed that. I got an attorney to draft it up, and she signed it, and that was it. I only paid her what she was asking, $1,800 a month, and then I paid the utilities, of course. And then every month I was making $1,200 to $2,000 a month net on that one little property. And the next one I got, I made about $30,000 net for the year on the second property. And so I just added every month. I added one new listing, and I did a little over $117,000 the first 6 months, and over $300K the first year. And I didn't own any of the properties. I still own none of my listings except for one, which I just bought recently. I bought a rehab, low income house that we're rehabbing, and we just got finished with, and we're going to get ready to list that. And the returns on that are just off the charts, off the charts.
Wow. I mean, you're blowing my mind here. So what kind of insurance do you have? Do you have to have some sort of a renter's insurance on the property? How do you handle that part?
Good question. So this is one of the objections I used to get from owners, because I would meet with owners and not all of them would say yes. In fact, most of them would say no to me. No, I don't want to do that. I'm not interested in that. But I would ask them why. Why do you not want to do this? Tell me why. And just, for my feedback. And I kept getting the same objections. And people would say, oh, it's too much wear and tear. Or what about liability? Or what if somebody gets hurt? Or what if, all these kind of things. So I started thinking through them and trying to find solutions so that when I met with owners next time, they would say yes. And so one of the objections was, well, what about insurance? What happens there? And the cool thing is, now that home sharing is such a big industry, there are tons of companies. That's all they do. They insure short-term rentals, what we call short-term rentals. And for a very small amount of money, 50, 80, $100 a month, you can get one of these policies, and it covers everything. It covers liability. It covers damages. It covers actually running a business out of the house, which is what you're doing. You're running this short-term rental business. And then you just put the owner as the beneficiary. So I'm paying for the insurance, but the owner is now covered. So they're covered from this policy that I buy, and it's not a big deal for me to pay for it because I'm making so much on the property. They're covered from Airbnb, which has a $1 million host guarantee that they cover the property. That's for every post on Airbnb. And then on top of that, they have their own rental policy, homeowners or renter policy. So they're basically insured 3 different ways, which they're not going to be insured that way if they do a tenant. So it's actually safer than renting it home.
Well, I love this, Brian. So I want to get into some more of this here, just unpack some of the criteria. But first, tell us, again, we're going to have a link to the webinar. People can take it and learn sort of step by step how to do this. People just can go to morrisinvest.com/Airbnb, and we'll have a link below in the description. What can people expect if they join you for your live webinar?
Okay, so on this training, it's about 90 minutes. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through each of those properties I just mentioned. I'll show you the actual properties. I'll show you inside my Airbnb account so you can see the amount of money that's coming in, the amount of money that's going out. I'll show you what I net on each one of these listings. And I'll explain how I get owners on board with this, how to do this. Now, you don't have to do this with leases. You could do this with properties you own. So if you already own property, I'll tell you how to do roughly 200 to 300% more on your cash flow than what you're currently doing. So we'll do that. I'm sorry, not on your cash flow, on your gross income on the property.
Wow.
So if you're used to making $1,000 a month on a unit, you're going to make roughly $3,000 a month on Airbnb, and I'll show you how we do that. And so basically, for 90 minutes, I'll walk you through how I did it step by step, how to scale it to really any size you want, because there are people now doing this at 7-figure levels and beyond. And then you're also going to get to see other people that I've taught that are also having gigantic numbers on Airbnb. In fact, I got a couple students that are approaching 7 figures, and I have 51, I believe now, that are over 6 figures, in like less than a year on Airbnb.
Wow.
So it's totally possible for you to do it as well. And you can do it
Well, I love that. I mean, I'm just thinking about my portfolio. We have over 50 properties. Just thinking like, okay, which ones when I start popping into Airbnb? I've got long-term leases on most of them. But it starts to get those juices flowing a little bit. So let's talk about the criteria for the types of properties that you're looking at here. So give me an example, like that 1-bedroom place that you talked to that lady. What type of a place was that? Where was it? What was it near?
Good question. Well, I'm going to tell you what my properties were like, but that doesn't mean that's the only type of property you can do, because I have thousands of students now in 38 different countries, and they're doing everything. I mean, they're doing single-family homes. Some people are doing boats and RVs. I have one student that literally got an Airstream trailer. He saw it in his neighbor's driveway. He approached the neighbor and said, "How much to rent that thing by the month?" And the owner thought he was crazy. The guy's like, "I don't know, $200 a month." He took that $200 a month Airstream trailer, put it on Airbnb, and makes about $2,500 a month on that trailer. So he created a $2,000 plus cash flow on a trailer. So you can list yachts, you can just list trailers, you can do condos, townhouses, all those kind of things. So I tell people, look, really any kind of property will work. What you make on the property is directly proportional to what you spend. So if you're spending $500 a month on a 1-bedroom in the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma or whatever, right? You can get a cheap place. You're going to make maybe $1,500 a month on Airbnb. If you're spending $5,000 for a luxury property in Scottsdale, which I just picked up one of these, then you could be making $15,000 a month on something like that. So it's all proportionate to how much it actually costs. But the type of property doesn't matter so much. All types of properties will work. You just want to make sure it's a property that's not in an HOA where they don't allow it. Right. So some HOAs allow it. You simply skip those and you go to other properties.
So on the criteria for the property, so let's say you've got that 1-bedroom place with the lady that because I think that's a great example, right? That's when it was like proof of concept for you beyond just the place you were living in. And then you thought how can I scale this? In that house that you're renting from this lady, was it like a weekly rental that you structured and put it up on Airbnb? Was it a monthly style? Did you put a gift basket with bananas and apples when people checked into your Airbnb? How did you start to deal with that? And cleaning services, did you have to pay for cleaning people to come in? How did you handle that?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I do is I do daily, what I call rentals, or essentially daily stays. So people can stay one night or they can stay multiple nights. Now, if they're staying on a weekend, I like them to book at least 2 nights, Friday and Saturday, Saturday and Sunday, at least 2 nights. But really, somebody could stay for a day or stay for a week. I've had people actually rent for a month where they're looking to move into town, need a place to stay. So you're going to have people coming and going. And so what I teach is how to do this without having to do any cleaning, because you're going to hire a cleaning company, professional cleaning company to come in. The cleaning fee that you would pay that cleaning company is going to be paid by the guest. So on Airbnb, you can just add it as a line item and it's charged directly to the guest. So if I can charge $100 in cleaning, I charge $110 usually to the guest. And the reason I charge more is because that $10 covers the toilet paper and the mints on the pillow and the coffee and the paper towels. And I also do wine. So I do like a $2 bottle of wine that nobody's ever heard of, so they don't know how much it is. So they walk in, bottle of wine, there's 2 waters there. I mean, this is stuff they don't get in the hotel, right? The last hotel I stayed in, they do give me a bottle of wine. So they get all these freebies. They're paid for by the guests, just like when you stay in a hotel, you're already paying for all that stuff. And then when the cleaning company comes in, they set all those items out. So I don't have to do any of that work. And then there's only one other big role, one big job, which is answering the guests' questions and all the communication that comes in for the guests. That's very easy to do when you have one property. When you have 10 or 15 or 20, it's very, very difficult. So what I teach people how to do is to outsource that. You can actually outsource these to services now. There's services that offer this for a few pennies on the dollar, and then you're not having to deal with the guests either. And so once you start outsourcing it, you can really get to the point where you're working a few hours a week and making these kind of numbers, which people think there's no way that's possible, but it really is. You can outsource almost everything and be making, giant numbers on Airbnb without actually having to do much.
Awesome stuff. Again, the webinar link will be below. People should check it out. It's morrisinvest.com/Airbnb. It'll take you right to the webinar to sign up. Craig, let's go back to the houses for a second. How am I finding these owners? I'm sure you teach in the webinar, as you mentioned, am I on the phone making 100 calls like I used to do on Craigslist to find houses to wholesale? Like how am I finding these little gems, these little diamonds in the rough?
Well, I go through 2 dozen sources of where to find leads for these. But remember, there are millions and millions and millions of rental properties. There will always be rental properties. In fact, every day new rental properties come available. So there's no lack of rental properties. You're not trying to convince anybody, to take their property and rent it because they're already looking for a tenant. All you're trying to do is show them that you're the best solution or I'm the best choice as a tenant. And when I get done talking to an owner and I show you how to do this, they will see you as the best option, even though you're going to be putting their property on Airbnb. And so we walk you through that, exactly how to do that step by step. What's
the lowest hanging fruit? And by that, I mean, is it vacation spots? If I want to get started, I don't have, I'm working a 9-to-5 job. I want to devote a few hours a day to this, Brian, put the kids in bed at night and I want to make a change in my life. Is it looking, near ski resorts, near a big lake? Is it just warm weather spots, or can I do this virtually anywhere? What would you recommend someone just trying to lowest hanging fruit get started? Okay, so the biggest misconception people have is that you need to be in a tourist location or a travel destination to do this, which couldn't be farther from the truth. Now, I live in Charleston, South Carolina. It's a tourist destination. But 99% of my students that have gone through my training don't live in those kind of locations. I'll give you some examples. I have a student that's in rural Maryland. He's like 2 hours outside of DC. That's the only way to describe where he is. He lives in a town of 6,000 people. That's it. He's got 5 listings and he's crushing it. And I said, how in the world are you doing this in a town of 6,000 people? And he said, Brian, I live so far out in the middle of nowhere that there's no hotels here. The only option people have when they come to town is to stay in a home sharing location or stay with friends. So I'm booking them out all the time, and rentals are really cheap here and I'm doing well. I got another student that has cabins in rural Canada, like literally cabins in the woods. He doesn't own any of them, by the way. And he's making a killing with these cabins. And I'm like, who goes to these cabins? He's like, I don't know, anybody that likes to travel to go out in the woods and want to stay in these cabins. So he's doing it in a rural area. I got people in the most boring town you can imagine. I went down to, not that Fort Worth is boring, but I went down to Fort Worth, Texas, and we went out into this suburb of Fort Worth. I don't remember the name of the town. And I met a couple of my students there in one of the Airbnb listings that one of my students has. And it's the most nondescript suburb in the most nondescript group of suburbs in a giant city in the middle of, just nothing special about it at all. It's a tract home. And he's doing about $2,000 a month net on that one property. So it doesn't really matter. You don't have to be in a tourist destination. You don't have to be in a that's great if you live in one of those. But there are all kinds of reasons people travel. And really, the only thing you need to look for is there a hotel where I live? If there's a hotel near you, then somebody already spent millions of dollars to build that thing and put it there because people are traveling there to stay short term. So if there's a hotel near you, or even if there isn't a hotel near you, there's an opportunity to do this. Let's talk about, before we wrap up here, Brian, I mean, this is great. This is an amazing episode, and I thank you for bringing so much value to my audience. Furnishing. Let's talk about furnishing the properties. Are you just targeting properties that are furnished, or are you flying into this 2 hour, away from DC and furnishing the place after you lease it?
Okay, good question. So first of all, I suggest that you start local. Start near where you are. So within a 1 hour or half-hour radius of where you live. Start there. Most people have no problem finding listings that way. You also want to start by looking at furnished properties. Now, granted, not all rentals are going to be furnished, but you want to start with furnished. It's way, way easier. If you don't want to do furnished or you're not able to find a furnished property, no big deal. I actually train people. I take them through exactly how to furnish it quickly, cheaply, and then get that money back in their pocket. So remember the $1,600 that I made net on that first property?
Right.
Well, that paid for my furnishing because it was only a one bedroom. I needed a bed, I needed a nightstand, I needed a couch, I needed a couple little tables and a dining table, not a lot, right? I bought all that stuff gently used on Facebook Marketplace and sites like that. I bought it all used, and that $1,600 paid for everything. So the first month, I paid for my furnishing, got that money back in my pocket, and then every month thereafter, I was making cash flow, serious cash flow. So that's what I teach people to do when they need to furnish a property.
And I guess one more question is about handling sort of customer service complaints. It's 2 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon and the cable TV doesn't work. Are they calling you? They calling your virtual assistant? How does that work?
They used to. They used to call me. It might be 2 a.m. and they're asking me questions, or they're drunk, or who knows. Any number of reasons, I need another towel, and I'm thinking, I'm going to go across town and bring you another towel. But now I've got systems in place, and the easiest way that I can explain how to do this is what we call virtual front desk. So when you have a bunch of these listings, you are running your own hotel essentially, except your hotel is spread out all over town or in multiple towns. So you need a front desk that can manage that. Mm-hmm. And the thing when you notice, if you ever walk into a hotel, a nice hotel or just a regular hotel, the owner is generally not behind the counter. The owner is some rich cat that has a bunch of hotels, and he has a front desk person, right? Unless you're in a very, very small hotel, maybe in the middle of nowhere. It's generally not the owner. So the same thing here. We're going to be the owner, but we're not going to be managing them. We're not going to be the front desk. And you can do that by virtually outsourcing all of that, all of it. So I might not make 100 pennies on every dollar, but I might make 95 cents on every dollar. And that 5 cents of every dollar that I bring in goes to pay for that virtual front desk. And I show you exactly how to set that up. And I go more into depth in that in the training.
Perfect. So we'll check out that webinar. I guess final question. What's the downside here? Thinking about my rental properties in a down economy, you mentioned vacation rentals, kind of the first to go with that $1 million spec home you were dealing with. Let's say you've got 50 listings, nondescript areas, economy goes south. What's a downside for you as a business owner?
Okay, well, the way I teach it is you don't want to get into any long-term commitments if you can help it, as far as long-term leases. Actually, what we're doing now with students is we're showing you how to get into a property with no lease, like no long-term lease whatsoever, so month to month. And you might be wondering, why in the world would an owner do month to month? Well, I'll explain in the training how you do that and make it worth their while, where they will say yes to month. So if you're doing a month-to-month lease or rental agreement, then there is no long-term commitment. There's no long-term risk. So that's the first thing, and we show you how to avoid that risk. The second thing is we haven't gone through a major downturn since Airbnb has existed. Airbnb is about 10 years old. It's really not hit its stride except for about the last 6 years. And we haven't gone through a major downturn. So it's hard to predict what will happen. But I do know this, Airbnb is a cheaper option, an alternative to hotels. So you can pay $150 to stay in a hotel room, or you could spend $150 to stay in a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, or sometimes less than it actually costs to stay in a hotel. So I think in a downturn, we're going to see a lot more people are going to switch to home sharing, because it's a better value proposition than hotels.
Right.
So who knows what could happen there, but if we have a major crash, some people say, what happens in a crash? Well, what happens to any industry in a crash?
Right.
Whether it's real estate, stocks, or all kinds of things, who knows what will happen.
Right.
But the cool thing about this business model that I really want to leave everybody with, Clayton, is that this is a business model where you can get in with as little as a deposit and first month's rent and immediately have a cash flowing property, a profitable business in 30 days or less. I don't know anything else where you can do this. And if you want to buy property, great, go for it. But this is something for the little guy or for somebody who has a couple $1,000 in their pocket to be able to launch something today, be making money in the next 30 days. And it's just...
I absolutely love it. I love it because there's a property sitting there vacant. You're helping this owner with some systems and processes that they probably haven't thought about. This is really a brilliant model, being able to bring and provide value to that person, because now they're getting cash flow. You're able to come in, put your systems and processes in place, and make additional cash flow on the back of this asset that was sitting there vacant. I absolutely love it. Brilliant stuff, Brian. Again, the training will be below. We'll have a link to that below. Just go to morrisinvest.com/Airbnb to take Brian's 90-minute webinar. Gold, absolute gold. Brian, I want to thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining us. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Clayton. I appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing everybody on the training.
Awesome. Yes, please head on over and check out the training. And thanks to all of you for downloading and subscribing. And hey, without you, you guys were asking for more Airbnb content. You wanted to know more about it. Has it something I've ever done? I did it one time to terrible effect. So I'm going to go through Brian's training as well and get brought up to speed and how to be able to do that on some of our rentals and beyond. So we'll see you next time here on the show, everyone. Now go out there, take action, and become a real estate investor, even if you don't own the properties, and you just find a vacant house and put it on Airbnb. We'll see you next time, everyone.